The term nerd culture is a misnomer. Traditionally, a nerd has always been known as someone who was socially awkward, but usually highly intelligent, not to be confused with the dork, who is similarly awkward but without the intelligence. Rather than having an interest in trends, pop culture, or what was fashionable, they were interested in things like geology, collecting stamps, or computer science. They may have preferred classical music to anything trendy, if they had an interest in music at all, and they dressed in attire purchased from the bargain bin at the local thrift store or supermarket, and they were probably into shit like Star Trek at a time when that sort of thing would get you punched in the nose by the captain of the high school football team. The label of nerd was not something one wore proudly or would declare for oneself. Nowadays, though, you can easily find a big-tittied, blue-haired Twitch streamer with neck tattoos claiming that very moniker simply because they're into video games and Marvel movies. The thing is, virtually everyone likes video games and superhero movies these days, and there is no shortage of men who would line up in droves to fuck a big-tittied girl with loud hair and wild tattoos. So no, you are not a nerd, and this entire culture has very little to do with being a nerd at all. Everything within the culture is mainstream as fuck, and one could easily point to myriad professional athletes who are into Marvel movies, entertainers who are into video games, rappers who are into anime, etc. This isn't nerd culture, it's children's culture. This is a symptom of a society that has had it too easy for too long, one in which growing up is something that has been pushed back later and later into life. The notion of hard work or sacrifice is eschewed in favor of comfort and instant gratification. It is not at all uncommon to hear people lament that they have to spend 40 hours out of their week working a mundane job that isn't glamorous or spiritually rewarding in order to barely make ends meet. And while there may be certain aspects of today's economic climate that can lend at least some legitimacy to these complaints, the self-imposed cost of having the latest model smartphone, a high payment on a new vehicle, the largest screen television with the highest resolution possible so that their PS5 and Xbox can reach their fullest potential, goes unacknowledged. One has to wonder if these people ever, even rarely, stop to think about the countless generations that preceded them having to work tirelessly, oftentimes just to survive, unable to even fathom such fanciful notions as living out their dreams. The basic knowledge of how to change a tire or fix a broken light socket escapes many men in order to make room for the ability to name all of the characters in Dragon Ball Z. Women feel entitled to the tall, dark and handsome Prince Charming, swiping away to the left on Tinder from anyone who isn't at least 6 feet tall and earning 6 figures because they've been told since they were little girls that they deserve only the best, simply for existing with a vagina. It's essentially a cardinal sin to say anything to anyone that they might find offensive, and this is the direct result of what happens when an entire generation is raised with the mindset that they're special and deserve participation trophies, sheltered from anything and everything that might disrupt the notion that they could be and do anything they wanted when they grew up. Their formative years came in an age in which they wanted for little and didn't have much to fear in terms of war or economic collapse. And let's be honest, save for the market crash of 2008 and the recent pandemic, the last 30 to 40 years have been fucking easy relative to virtually all of prior human history. Most people today between 30 and 50 have had it pretty good, and I dare say too good. For fuck's sake, the term fat-phobic should not exist. We live in a time in which people are so spoiled as to blame society and stigma for the notion of obesity being unhealthy, rather than taking any accountability for their own agency and lack of discipline. As though it's the mean words fat people must endure that prevents most of them from reaching their elder years, rather than heart disease and diabetes. If that's not a symptom of a society in dire need of growing up, then I don't know what is. And surely at this point, there are many among those listening to this preparing to furiously type away to point out why everything said up to this point is wrong, without taking even a brief moment to consider its validity. It's quite likely that you are finding this offensive and hurtful. And this is likely because you are ill-adapted to cope with anyone saying things that you do not like, and you lack the ability to be self-deprecating and have a laugh at your own expense from time to time. Those raised prior to the 90s didn't have the luxury of anti-bullying policies to protect them from having to learn to manage their emotions or deal with adversity at a young age, which is why they're not quick to call for the authorities to silence those whom they find offensive. And the ones who had the greatest trials of all of grade school? You guessed it. The nerds. And it should come as no surprise that the real nerds are the ones who figured out how to manage their resources properly and find success in life.